And good evening, and welcome to the Miracle of Prosperity. I'm your host, Reverend Jim Webb, author of the book, The Soul of Prosperity, as well as several others, including Prosperity from A to Z, The 30 P's of Prosperity, and Create Your Self-Manifesting Vision Board. I also serve as the senior minister of the Tacoma Metaphysical Chapel in Silver Spring, Maryland, and it's such an honor and pleasure to be here with you tonight. Tonight we've got a very special show planned, and it's a two-part series on the prosperity of relationships. For as you know, we cover all aspects of prosperity on this show. We look at prosperity holistically. So, we look, of course, at financial prosperity, logistical prosperity, where our lives work in joy and in harmony, and our lives work with less struggle and more effortlessly. We look at professional prosperity, where we have a wonderful job with wonderful pay, where we provide a wonderful service in a wonderful way, a la Florence Scovel Shinn. We look at spiritual prosperity, where we develop the peace that passes all understanding. We look at family prosperity, where our family relationships are no longer a source of worry or division, but where they are a source of affirmation and support. And we look at other relationships and all relationships. So that's what we're going to work with tonight. We're going to work with relationship prosperity. And I want to share with you an old adage that I used to hear way back before we realized how misogynistic it was. There was an old adage, happy wife, happy life. And despite the misogyny of this old adage, it touched on a deep truth, that one of the keys to holistic prosperity is harmonious relationships. You can't be prosperous fully if your relationships are not prosperous. And prosperous relationships open you to prosperity in every other aspect of your life. For all aspects of prosperity are intertwined. So we're going to unpack that even more tonight. And I want to set up the model that we're going to use to unpack that. As you know, one of our favorite guests, Edward Miller, talks about the consciousness of non-duality, which is akin to the consciousness of oneness, where we feel ourselves to be at one with the divine source, not separated from the divine source, where we feel whole because we feel at one with all that is, where we feel adequate, loved, and loving because we feel at one with the source of love. And from that place of fullness or oneness or non-duality, or as A Course in Miracles says, that inner state of forgiveness, where we are no longer separate from each other or separate from source, and there is no longer any friction. From that place, we can create, maintain, manifest, and sustain the most harmonious relationships possible. So relationships can be a barometer for where we are in the journey to non-duality or oneness or forgiveness. When we are not in harmony in our relationships, that is a cry for love. It is a place where we are not aware of love's presence. It is a place where we are feeling separate from the source of love, and that feeling of separation shows up in our relationships. And let's break that down. Let's unpack that a little bit so we really understand the approach we're taking. Say, for example, you feel separated from the source of love. Even though the scripture says nothing shall separate you from the love of God, even though A Course in Miracles says you are as love created you like itself, and you are part of love. If you feel separate from the source of love, that feeling of separation and all the feelings attendant to that, feelings of unworthiness, I feel separate from love, therefore I feel unworthy of love. Feelings of inadequacy, I feel separate from love, so there is something wrong with me and I feel inadequate. All of the feelings attendant to that idea of separation from love, they're going to show up in your relationships. When you feel separate from love and therefore unlovable, your relationships are going to reflect that, because your relationships are an outer barometer of your inner energy. And they are there to show you where you have an opportunity to grow, where you have an opportunity to heal, and where you have an opportunity to transform the consciousness of separation into the consciousness of non-duality or unity or oneness or forgiveness, for they are all somewhat interchangeable. So every relationship is a barometer and a trigger for your growth, for your healing, for your transformation, and for your prosperity. And we're going to explore all of this tonight and so much more. And it's not just me exploring this with you. I've brought onto the camera a relationship expert and one of your favorite guests on the show, Ed Miller. It's so good to see you, Ed. What a
It's so
wonderful
good to see you too.
background.
Yeah,
Yes, I'm so glad
excuse
to
my
have
voice.
you on the show
Yeah,
this
it's so good
evening.
to see you also. We talked about this subject of prosperity.
Yes,
Um, I got it. I really
yes,
got it because I'm realizing in this time in my life that what in a non-dual from a non-dual perspective, prosperity is who I am.
yes,
Yeah, and that in order to be aware of that, I need to, as you talked about before, get out of all the contracted thoughts and beliefs and stories and be true to myself
yes,
as prosperity.
yes,
And I've had a lot of success in my life with relationships. I've been
yes.
married for 40 years. I
Mhm.
have children that still want to be part of my life. I have friends for some of them are 30, 40-year-old friends that we've been in relationship together. But I'm realizing that relationship and prosperity are so aligned, so
Yes,
aligned, that as
yes,
I look at all my relationships that are dear to me, they're important to me, I realize
yes,
they're there for me to evolve.
yes,
I'm looking out there at my friends. Oh, I adore them. He's wrong. I mean, all of my judgments of all the people that I most love are
yes,
opportunities for me to grow and heal.
yes.
And it's been, and I was talking to my wife about this recently. I'm a better mate now to my
Mhm.
wife because I'm at peace with myself.
Yes,
Yeah, I'm a better mate to my wife now because I can be compassionate to myself, which allows me to
yes,
be compassionate with her. I
absolutely.
can be a better mate to my wife because I can share with myself.
Yes,
Always share with her too,
yes,
because I can be
hmm
generous. When you're
yes.
being cheap with yourself, how are you going
hmm
to be generous to somebody else?
Exactly. When your cup is empty and you're giving and creating resentment and you're giving and resenting it, how is that going to support a healthy, balanced relationship? It's
You
not.
can't.
It's going to
You
support
can't.
resentment. So, as you fill yourself with love and light, your relationship has no choice but to reflect that,
Yeah,
because your relationship is simply an outer reflection of your inner
absolutely,
relationship with yourself.
absolutely.
And you said something extremely fascinating that science is now bearing out. One of the keys to longevity is good, solid, deep, fulfilling relationships. The science is bearing that out. They have been doing studies of cancer survivors and looking at all the variables that determine whether cancer survivors survive or not. And one of the key components of that is how many and what is the quality of their relationships. When they did studies of the longevity of the Greek people on Greek islands with the Mediterranean diet, not only was it their diet, not only was it the fact that they walked up and down these steep hills in the Greek mountains on these steep Greek islands every day, not only was it that they drink red wine every night, but you know what brought all of that together? Was they were walking up and down those steep inclines on those Greek mountains to visit with their friends every night.
Exactly.
They
Exactly.
weren't sitting there like this on the internet, on their phones. They weren't sitting like this on Facebook. They were interacting heart to heart every night. And those fulfilling relationships were an aspect of their longevity too, which is why they lived to 110 and we lived to 72.
Well, you're making a lot of sense. Anytime you're able to have a community where you're
Yes.
supporting each other, caring for each
Yes.
other, responding to each other, you're creating a kinship of
Yes.
love and
Yes.
sharing. And what are
Yes.
some of the other components? Also, relationships require you to get to master your emotions,
Yes.
because very often, when we're young, we're emotionally immature, and we still
Yes.
respond from hysteria. You said this, and you hurt my feelings, and you really meant this, but when you become emotionally mature, you let more things blow off, and you get
Yes.
a feel for people. Sometimes are wounded, and sometimes they can
Yes.
strike out, but you
Yes.
don't have to respond to it.
Yes.
You don't have to
When
take
you
it
heal,
personally. And what
absolutely.
non-duality says, there is nothing personal to take.
Yes. Absolutely. When you heal, you are less likely to respond from an unhealed place and therefore to perpetuate an imbalanced and unhealed relationship. For
Yes,
A Course in Miracles says, I am not alone in the effects of my healing. So when you come to a relationship from a place of fullness, as opposed to a place of your woundedness, and you no longer expect somebody outside of you to make up for or compensate for or fill what you perceive as that deficit within yourself, because you have filled that what you have erroneously perceived as a deficit within yourself with the
exactly.
truth that you are love, you are light, you are lovable, you are perfect, you are holy. And when you are secure in that, that's going to be reflected in your relationship because you
Yes,
will be unflappable.
yes,
Because the dynamic of the relationship changes. There is nothing that you need from the other person. So, as Pat Benatar said in her song, Love is a Battlefield, love no longer needs to be a battlefield. It no longer needs to be a tug of war for recognition or acknowledgement or affirmation, because you are self affirming
exactly.
and your relationship.
A lot of people are in relationships, and they see their partner, or they think they see things wrong with their partners in relationships. He's
Yes,
selfish. He doesn't listen. He's unattentive. He doesn't
yes,
care. I mean, we're busy thinking about all the things that are deficient about somebody out there,
yes.
and telling them, and we're unhappy
Mhm.
because they're wrong.
Yes.
When you are nurturing yourself and loving yourself, there's nobody out there that's wrong. Everybody
Amen.
out there is just who they are. And
Yes.
your job is to learn how to love them,
Yes.
and not
And the first step in your learning how to love them is loving
yourself
yourself
first.
so
First.
that you are in a place of overflow.
Yes.
Um, I love putting biblical truths to this. And one of the biblical truths from the Lord's Prayer is forgiving our debts and our debtors.
Mm-hmm.
When we are in imbalance, We feel like they owe us something because we need them to acknowledge us, see us, listen to us, hear us, or agree with our point of view in order that we may feel validated. We feel they owe us that debt. And
Yes.
we get resentful and we go into contempt if they are not able to fulfill that debt.
Exactly.
But when we know of our lovability, our perfection, our wholeness, and our holiness, we no longer have that demand, place that demand on them, and we forgive them of that debt.
Yes.
And the other side of that, which is fascinating to me, is when we feel whole and holy and full and okay within ourselves. We no longer believe that we have to contort ourselves to be what they need us to be to meet
Exactly.
their unfulfilled needs.
Exactly.
So we've forgiven what we believe we owe them. We've forgiven our debts and our debtors.
It's perfect.
And that forgiveness is synonymous with oneness, is synonymous with non-duality, is synonymous with healing.
Yes.
So
You know,
it's a, go ahead.
I've been married for 40 years, and I a few years ago, not a few years, a little while, a little farther back, I was very angry at my wife because when we have discussions, she'd always disagree with me,
Mm-hmm.
and I was trying to assert my point of view and have her to hear it, and she wasn't hearing it. So what I felt is that I felt like, I can't relate to her.
Mm-hmm.
She's either not smart enough or I'm not smart enough or somehow we can't relate to each other.
Uh-huh.
As I have healed myself,
Mm-hmm.
that seems so ridiculous to me
Yeah.
now. I see, when my wife and I get into discussions and there's some combativeness, I don't look at it. I'm not threatened anymore.
Yes.
Because before I was threatened, you're not, and now I'm saying, she sees it that way,
Yes.
and she's not wrong. I'm not wrong.
Uh-huh.
There is no wrong,
Yes.
and maybe there's an opportunity here to love,
Yes.
be kind, and to
Yes.
listen, and to
Yes.
feel,
Yes.
instead of fighting and
Yes.
trying to identify who's the right one and who's the wrong one.
Yes.
Because
So
our
let's
egos
break that
love
down.
right and wrong, don't they?
Absolutely. Yes. And let's break that down a little more. Based on what you said, it sounds like there was a part of you that needed her agreement as a
Absolutely.
form of affirmation, and a form of
Absolutely.
affirmation is love. So there was a part of you that was misprocessing that as, if you don't agree with me, you don't love me.
You don't
And
love
I need you to love me.
Yeah.
And you learned and you
There's
grew
a
from
lot
that.
of traps that we get into that we can
Yes.
become aware of and heal.
Uh-huh. Yes.
But they're only healed in awareness.
Yes.
That awareness is the love.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. Absolutely. So we're learning a lot about relationships, folks at home, and you must have some questions about it too. So we're going to go to break and sell some soap. And when we come back, we're going to work with your questions and we're going to continue this discussion on the Miracle of Prosperity here on the New Thought Media Network.
Please help us say thank you to our organizational sponsors, including the Hefferland Foundation, Affiliated New Thought Network, International New Thought Alliance, Science of Mind Archives and Library Foundation, Center for Spiritual Living Denver, Center for Spiritual Living Midtown, New Thought Philadelphia, Planned Happiness Institute, Summit Center for Spiritual Living, One Heart Retreats, Center for Spiritual Living on the Lake, Unity Spiritual Center, Kitchener, Om Center for Spiritual Living, La Mesa, Satya Center, Center for Spiritual Living, North Jersey, Unity of Savannah, and Center for Spiritual Living, Seattle, as well as all of our individual donors. Thank you for making New Thought Media Network a place to be. Please come be you. And remember, like, share, and subscribe. New Thought Media Network, positively inspiring.
here on The Miracle of Prosperity with my guest, Edward Miller, author of Soul Power, powerful spiritual teacher, and we're working with the idea of prosperous relationships, how creating prosperous relationships enhance our overall prosperity, and how our overall prosperity can support us in prosperous relationships. And we want to take your questions as well, so be sure to put them in the comments. And as we are preparing our responses to your questions, I have a question for you, Ed.
Okay.
So far, we've talked about deep, long-lasting, intimate relationships because those are the most egregious mirrors that
Yeah,
allow us to see where we are on our journey to oneness.
absolutely.
How can casual relationships support us in this journey as well?
We're going to have casual relationships. We're going to have a barber. We're going to
Mm-hmm.
have a mother-in-law.
Uh-huh.
We're going to have lots of relationships that are in our lives that we have to manage also.
Uh-huh.
And if you're coming from a place of empathy and understanding and care, in all of your relationships, they can prosper, and you can prosper in love also. But you
Mm-hmm.
really are giving lots of opportunities in relationships. Many of them, you're my good friend,
Yes.
and when we talk, we can argue, we can see it differently, but the love is so palpable. It's so
Yes.
real. And
Yes.
it's what I live for. I live for the
Yes.
love connection. And I know sometimes it doesn't always feel right. Sometimes it feels a little bit, vulnerable.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. And that's one thing
Yes.
you have to be ready. You have to be available also. You have to be available and vulnerable to have
Yes.
prosperity of intimacy.
Yes. I love what you said about living for love.
Yes.
And as you all know, I love Motown and I love putting music to everything that we discuss. So there's another song by Pat Benatar, the one who also did Love is a Battlefield, which is what we are dispelling now. But she did another song called We Live for Love. And you just articulated that. And our casual relationships are opportunities to fine tune our ability to love. For example, sometimes our casual relationships can be annoying, and that's an opportunity to love
Oh yes, people we love can annoy the hell
the
out of
heck
us.
out of us.
And you find you're always being triggered, and then you're
Yes,
going back to awareness. Oh,
yes.
they're just a fool, and but I love them.
Hmm.
They're just who they are. They're adorable. So you're always, becoming aware of what your ego's still caught in.
Yes. And what I love is that any time I'm starting to point the finger, I remember what one of my mentors, Reed Brown, said to me. He said, anytime you're pointing at someone else, you've got three fingers pointed
Right
back
back at
at
you.
you. And so what I take that to mean is if somebody is triggering me, there is a need for me to be aware of love
Absolutely, I
where
get that.
I'm not aware of love. And you know what I've learned to do, which is just so fascinating and peaceful, is when someone's bugging the heck out of me, I on some level, I tune them out for a moment
Yes.
and I breathe and I bring
Yeah.
in love
Yeah, you
in
bring
that place that's
bring in the
being
space.
triggered.
Exactly, exactly.
And as I bring in love in that place that's being triggered, a miracle occurs.
Yeah.
A miracle is let me see this differently.
Yes,
And
surrendering. Yes.
all of a sudden, from that place where I am full, where I was feeling unloved, unheard, unseen, unrespected, or whatever, all of a sudden, when I am full of love, I see them in their hurt, their pain, or their
Yeah.
perceived deficit.
And then
And
you
I
just
can
love them
allow,
home as soon as possible, right?
yes, and I can allow, and I can allow that
I
overflow
love
to
you, but
flow
I
within.
can't talk to you right now.
Right.
I
So
love you
sometimes,
so much. Let's go.
yeah, so sometimes what'll happen, like if I'm on a Zoom call or something and someone's annoying is on, I'll just sit there and I'll just breathe. And eventually there's enough love and light coming to me through me that I can send some to them. And I'm
But
not
it's so
triggered.
think about how emotionally mature it is to realize you're being triggered and you realize it doesn't matter.
Yes.
Yeah, they're triggering me, but that really doesn't matter. What matters
It's a
is the
beautiful
opportunity
thing.
to find out why it's triggering you. That's the
Right.
opportunity.
Yeah, and
You believe it.
yes, and let's put an underline and highlight that. To be triggered is to be healed. And isn't that why we're here?
I have to agree with that. Yes.
So if someone is triggering you, they are an angel sent here by your higher self or invited into your life by your higher self that you might heal.
Yes.
Thank you for showing up in my life as an a-hole, for you help me to heal.
You're just the a-hole I need right now. Learn
Exactly.
this lesson. Exactly.
There was a song by the Cars on their first album back in 1979.
Oh
You
my
know,
God.
you're
You're
just
a
what I
throwback.
needed.
You know that, right?
Say what?
You're a throwback.
Oh, yeah. There was a song, Just What I Needed. So anybody that shows up in your life is just what you need for your healing, your
Right.
growth, and your journey back to a consciousness of oneness, non-duality, or forgiveness, for they are all interchangeable.
Yes.
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 So casual relationships can be very useful.
Absolutely.
What are some other strategies for dealing with difficult people, Ed?
Well, you gave the most important one, but I want to reiterate that. That's the one about taking a moment.
Mm-hmm.
When you're triggered, you're triggered. When you're triggered, you're like in a contraction. Like all of a sudden, I'm mad, I'm annoyed,
Yes.
I'm contracted, and all you see in that moment is what's wrong.
Yes.
But that breath, that one moment of taking a breath,
Mm-hmm.
it takes you back to the space,
Mm-hmm.
and you then can acknowledge that your irritation, somebody annoying you, is just your contracted perspective, and that
Yes.
they're perfect because you're perfect.
Yes.
That's the truth of this. There's only perfection here anyway.
Yes.
And you can always, and they call that the direct approach. You can always go back to the source of God, go back to the oneness, go back to the heart,
Mm-hmm.
and then you can bear any situation. The most
Mm-hmm.
annoying people you can sit around and feel love for, because we're all just struggling. We're all trying to do the best we can. Some of our
Yes.
stuff is janky and
Yes.
nonsense,
Yes.
but we're all just doing the best we can.
Amen. We're all on the bus trying to find our way home,
We are.
like that song, What If God Was One of Us? We're all on
Yes.
the bus trying to find our way home.
Yeah.
So we've gotten some questions. I noticed one from Jane Batt that is quite fascinating because it begs a prayer. So let's work with that one. And I'm working on changing a long-term pattern of caretaking. As I take a step back from it, I feel guilty for not doing it. What prayer might be useful for reaching a new understanding? Well, before we go to a prayer, let's go to a principle and then let's pray the principle. The principle is A Course in Miracles lesson 108. Giving and receiving are one. And what this means is when we're in relationship, that relationship is part of a divine flow. And Reverend Jane, you understand and you know this old Aramaic process. Dalacha, from God. Balacha, through the God that is me. Lalacha, to the God that is you. And you know that creates a flow from God of the universe, from God of all, from God of infinity, from God of light, love, glory, and grace, through the vessel of God that is me, built and made in God's likeness, to God, to the universe, and to be returned to the universe. And that cycle tells us that what we give creates a void that is filled. And when we give, we create a void, and that void is filled. But there must be balance. There must be balance. We cannot give from an empty cup. So we have to continually fill our cup.
Yes.
So receiving is as holy as giving. Now, what has kind of gone awry in our consciousness is that we have gotten something twisted. We have gotten twisted the nobility of martyrdom. We have believed martyrdom to be noble. And that comes from the twisted thought that we are sinful and we have to work our way back to God, and therefore we have to martyr ourselves and walk over cracked glass and bare feet and pay penance and give and give and give as penance. That's what we got twisted.
Yes.
But when we realize we are loved unconditionally by God, and as A Course in Miracles says, there is no sin, it has no consequence. And when we understand our innocence and our deservingness, we realize that we can and must receive in order to give, and the two are one, and they must be in balance.
Yes.
So a prayer that might reflect this principle is, Mother, Father, God, Great Spirit, our Creator, source of love, source for good, force for good, that flows to me now and flows through me now as its reflection and its magnification. God, as I know you as the source that flows to me, God, as I know you as the source that flows through me, God, as I know you as the source that expresses as me, I open to the balance of giving and receiving. I open to the nobility of receiving as well as giving. I open to the truth that everything I give, I deserve. And everything I deserve, I share. For each time I go through a cycle of sharing, I open to more and more and more, because I can't beat you giving, God, no matter how I try. So I thank you for this balance, God. For this balance helps me to expand easily and effortlessly, and this balance expands your light on the earth. And this is my function, and this is my purpose in balance and grace and love. Let this be so. And so it is. Amen.
That's a nice treatment. Beautiful.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So that can be a treatment for that. What comments do you have on what we've been discussing, Ed?
Well, I keep going back to empathy and understanding someone else. You know,
Mm-hmm.
um, we we have a lot of preconceived ideas of what other people are experiencing and what they're feeling and what they're going through. But to be emotionally mature also means to be empathetic to others
Okay.
and understand and relate and be able to find the parts of you when you see them in pain that you can relate to with them, that you
Mm.
can understand when people are feeling whatever they're feeling. You can, it's the beautiful expression when you can have empathy for your relationships, because it brings
Yes.
intimacy and more vulnerability to the relationship. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm seeing that my relationships are so fulfilling because they're real,
Mm.
heartfelt. I'm gonna tell you how I feel. I'm gonna tell you when I'm struggling.
Mm-hmm.
I want you to be open and courageous enough to tell me when you're struggling. And I want
Yes.
to be able to foster um, intimacy between us, where we're not
Mm-hmm.
afraid to be vulnerable with each other.
Yes.
So I think that's very important nowadays. That and also what's important is that we have boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
We um, deserve to have boundaries as to how we expect to be treated.
Yes.
If we're in a situation, in a relationship situation, we're feeling put upon or we're
Mm-hmm.
feeling not appreciated,
Mm-hmm.
we have every right to set boundaries at that moment. This is making me feel too vulnerable. This is making me feel uncomfortable. I'm not going to accept that kind of treatment. I'm not going to accept that kind of intimacy. I'm not going to accept. I'm going to set boundaries for
Mm-hmm.
myself, because how I relate to myself is very important also.
Yes. Like
Yeah.
that old saying, good fences make good neighbors, good
Yes.
boundaries make good relationships. Yes. Yes. And we've got another question from Shay. Is it appropriate to ask to be paid for being a guest minister practitioner in a spiritual community, or is it just sacred service? It's once per month in another community. What are your thoughts on that, Ed?
You know what? I love the opportunity to express my heart.
Yes.
I do that all the time. I do a lot of recovery work with addicts, and I don't get compensated. I'm not looking for money out of that. I'm looking for an opportunity to share my heart and
Mhm.
my point of view with people
Mhm.
that may be struggling, that may
Yes.
be um, more vulnerable and need some support and acknowledgement
Mhm.
and care. So I don't look at these as money opportunities. I look at these as opportunities for me to share love. And I
Mhm.
do that. I do that in every opportunity I can. And
Yes.
what has happened for me for that
Mhm.
attitude that I've had as long as I can remember, I've
Mhm.
been very prosperous and I'm
Yes.
abundantly blessed financially around
Yes.
every corner. But it has
Yes.
to do with, I think, my attitude about prosperity and abundance. I feel as though I am prosperity and abundance. I'm never afraid to be generous. I'm
Uh-huh.
never afraid of giving too much.
Yes.
Sometimes I have to, as I talked a minute ago about, I had to set boundaries, but
Yes.
boundaries are my boundaries and I can open them up and stretch them if I choose to, but I don't have
Mhm.
to be pushed to expand my boundaries. So
Okay.
those are the things that come to mind to me about relationships.
Okay. And what I hear you saying, Ed, if I could phrase it slightly differently based on the model of a flow, is that you give freely because you know that giving and receiving are one. And
Absolutely.
what you give freely, you know, is returned to you tenfold in a number of different ways
Oh,
through a
many, many,
number of
many
different
ways. Yes.
channels.
Yes. I'm very, very blessed abundantly on
Yes.
many levels.
So let's look at, and when we look at Shay's question, we can look at it from that perspective based on your response. And so might you get paid for this thing? Maybe, maybe not. What might it also yield you? And this is something I work with as well. There are times when I do things for free, but you know what it yields me? I may do a lecture or a service or something, although when I go to other churches I always get paid. But I I may do something, a mitzvah of some sort, or a spiritual act of some sort. And it may not be a tit for tat payment, but I know that if I go there and I do this thing, somebody's going to call me for a reading. Somebody's going to call me for a coaching session. Somebody's going to call me for a counseling session. And generally, 3, 5, or 10 people are going to call me for a reading or for a coaching session or for a
We don't
counseling
always have
session.
to know where our revenue is coming from. All we have to do is
Right.
know that it's coming to us.
And because it comes from God, and God can use
Yes.
an infinite number of sources in an infinite number of ways. So when we think about it that way, we can think about it less in terms of tit for tat, and think about it using the model of when I share a part of me that is God, there is a void that is created that God will fill with 10 parts of God. And what are some of the things that God would fill that with? God would fill that with the $1 million idea. God will fill that with the idea for the next book that's going to make you another $20,000. God will fill that with a sense of peace and joy that you never thought possible, which is worth more than what money can buy. So when we think about giving and receiving as one in this way and simply being in the flow of God, sharing being a part of that flow, and sharing facilitating that flow, it
Yes.
might be a different way of seeing this. Uh, and there may, and at some point, if and let's do another for example based on this specific experience. So, this thing that you're doing once a month, maybe at first you don't get paid, but then maybe this thing is attracting more people to that church than their Sunday service is. Maybe then it's time to put your hand out. Or maybe then it's time they will likely invite you to do other things that are paid
Absolutely.
because they recognize your value as you recognize your value.
Well, that's for example, like I do, I speak in recovery groups,
Hmm.
and they don't have the necessarily the budget for speakers,
Right.
um, but people who are in recovery dealing with addiction are wonderful hearts to share
Yes.
awareness with.
Yes.
So I believe that so my payoff, when I get
Hmm.
my cash payment,
Yes.
I see their eyes open and it's like, oh wow.
Yes.
Addicts are often very contracted into themselves.
Yes.
When I can see them opening their eyes and see things maybe a little bit differently in a more courageous and loving way, that's my cash. That's my money. And something
Exactly.
I've also found is that when I give in that kind of generosity that I'm just giving from heart, you're
Uh-huh.
right. Whatever I do, they want to pay me. They want to give me.
Yes.
My pattern has been is I give the money back.
Uh-huh.
I just try to circulate it as much as possible because the more I
Yes.
circulate it, the more somehow I get blessed abundantly.
Yes. Like the old song, you can't beat God's giving. The more you give, the more she gives to you.
Yeah,
So
but
keep on
giving,
giving because it's really true.
you're very interesting. Giving is being generous in money, generous in time,
Time.
generous in heart,
Yes.
generous in the good word. Being
Yes.
generous is not just about money; it's about your
Yes.
intentions. I'm
Yes.
here to share myself.
Yes. And let me tell you something, Ed. Let me tell you something. And I've told this to people who take my classes all the time. Because I do these classes and I get paid for them. And Iyanla Vanzant, when she took one of my classes, she called me on the phone. She said, Jim, you're not asking for enough money. She said, Jim, you need to raise your prices. Jim, and I said, yeah, Mama Ia, let me do that.
Here's my price.
But you know what happens? Sometimes, to me, I feel like I should be paying them. Because when I am giving in that way, I am so filled.
So Phil,
I am so healed. I
yes,
am so transformed. And I'll give you an example. We've been doing, and we're in my class now, we're doing this 30-day thing of creating heaven on earth. And we're doing this series of meditations where we nurture and cultivate the energy and consciousness of heaven on earth and allow it to take form in our lives. And that came through my channel, right? So I gave it to people and I even put it on Facebook and put it some other places so that anybody could have access to these meditations. But you know what? Every time I use that meditation, I take a quantum leap and I am healed. So I give this to the world, but I really give it to myself because every
I feel
time
the
I
exact
work with
same
it,
way. I feel the
yes,
exact same way. Yeah.
yes. I think I'm giving to the world, but I'm really giving to myself. And I've got a new class starting tomorrow. Starting tomorrow. Spirit Speaks on reality creation. And I've got one more slot in that class. And these two classes are companion classes. Spirit Speaks gives you spiritual guidance on how you can create your new reality, your heaven on earth. You ask questions of spirit specific to you on how you can create your heaven on earth. And then on Thursdays, with the Creating Heaven on Earth class, we take the input that Spirit offers and we do exercises and we do discussions and we do coaching on that, individual to you. And so I had one person who was unable to make the class after registering, so I have one more slot available. And you can go to my website, find out more information, or the number that we just flashed, 202 253 6009. You can text me for that one slot that's still available. And if you can't make that, what we're doing is we're making it possible for you to audit that class. What does audit mean? You get the Monday class and you get the Thursday class. You get the recordings on Zoom. So you can have the meditations. You can benefit from the discussions. You can benefit from the questions that other people ask, which are probably your questions too. And you can get all of that for only $100. So you can audit the class and get all the recordings for $100. So you can text me about that as well, because those slots are unlimited. So giving and receiving are one. We're going to go to break now, and then we're going to come back with some final thoughts and questions here on the New Thought Media Network.
New Thought Media Network is on the rise. We're looking to grow with you. Do you have technical media experience or perhaps a desire to learn? Are you willing to volunteer your precious time and attention? We share this message to benefit all. If you possess a computer with a camera and a microphone, we will share our knowledge with you. Behind the scenes or being the star, let us bless our one. Contact us at info@ntmedia.org.
And we're back here on the Miracle of Prosperity. And we have 2 more questions to work with and 10 minutes in which to work with them. So the first question set we'll work with is Mignon Hooper. And the question is a twofold question. One aspect of it is about coming out to friends, family, co-worker as part of transparency. And the other part is, or comment, is that sometimes people have difficulty when they can't place you in their preconceived box of you. And these are 2 different ways of asking the same question, and the answer is the same. The task for each and every one of us is cultivate union, oneness, non-duality, with the source of unconditional love to such a degree that we are able to feel, experience, and vibrate our own self-love without condition. For the more we are able to access, feel, experience, and vibrate unconditional self-love without condition, the more the issue of coming out becomes moot, and the more someone else's expectations or boxes that they want to put you in become moot. Because the whole process of coming out, now of course I've been out to some degree or another for 40 years, so I'm a little bit experienced about this in a way that someone who is still on a different part of their journey might not be. But to me, there was an old, antiquated version of coming out like 40 years ago when I started doing it, which was, I'm gay, do you still love and accept me? And at this point, it has nothing to do with that. It says, I love and accept myself just as I am. Deal with it. And if not, there's the door. It won't make no never mind to me because I'm still whole, complete, wholly loved and lovable. So you see, there's an evolution in consciousness that comes in time only as a result of exposing yourself to unconditional love,
Yes.
so that you are so joyfully confident and peacefully accepting of yourself in your own skin, just as God created you, that the outer world's acceptance or rejection doesn't matter. Now, the interesting thing about that is when you accept yourself fully, that's going to be reflected to you in your outer world. So it's not a question of what other people think or what other people expect. It's a question of moving yourself forward in your own journey of unconditional love and acceptance.
And also, Reverend Jim, being true to yourself.
Yes.
Being true to yourself. Now, you say, what does being true to myself mean? Being true to
Uh-huh.
yourself is being aware of what
Uh-huh.
you feel, being
Yes.
aware of what triggers you, being true to
Yes.
yourself, and in that awareness, making compassionate choices on how to deal with things when you're feeling vulnerable.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
That's
So,
what being true to yourself is all about. It's not,
yes.
I'm this and I'm defining myself to others so they can accept me. It does. Others don't matter. What matters is
Yes.
if you're being true to yourself.
Yes.
If
And
you're
what am
being
I feeling right now? Am I feeling vulnerable because I am feeling judged, because I have judgments on
exactly.
a part of myself? And there's an opportunity for me to heal here. So it has
Am I
nothing to do
feeling
with whether they
inadequate
accept me
because
or not.
am I feeling inadequate because I somehow am not ideal or not what somebody feels I should be?
Yes.
Feel all those things are being true to yourself.
Yes.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you, Ed. And we had another question from Rosa Isabella about how to comfort a relative who has lost an adult child. And Ed, I'll let you read that because I put
Wow,
my glasses out of
that's a
reach.
challenge right there. That's a challenge. When someone loses a child, usually the way we're used to it is that the adult, I mean the parent is lost, and then the child, comes later. But when you lose a child, the pain that you have can be something that you have to bear for in your mind, in your heart for a long time. But at the same time, even in that pain, even in that what I can probably be a horrific pain of losing a child, there is opportunity to love. There is opportunities to be generous with yourself. There is an opportunity for you to be patient with yourself. There is an opportunity to be aware of really what you feel and what it triggers. These are all opportunities to heal and grow and love yourself on deeper levels.
And as a
So,
and as a supporter, your opportunity is to hold the space of love
yes,
so that love flows to you and through you in support of this relative who is feeling such a void.
yes,
And in a gentle, loving, gradual sort of way, this person, in their pain, in their grief, in their rage, and in their release, they are creating a void that love can fill. And as you channel love to them in the form of time, energy, compassion, and sometimes when they're going over the same material over and over again, just in a sense almost zoning out and zoning up, so that you simply become a channel for love.
yes.
They are learning in a very subtle way, they are learning to draw love from the universe to fill that void. And that is facilitating their growth.
And we have to be as coaches and as ministers, we have to be compassionate
Yes.
to that pain.
Yes.
We've got to be real. I mean, and being compassionate to that pain really is being empathetic to it and understanding
Yes.
it, because that's where the healing takes place.
Yes. And
Me
sometimes it's just,
understanding what you're experiencing helps us
yes.
both to evolve.
Yes. And sometimes it's just showing up.
Yeah.
You don't have to say anything. You don't have to do anything. You just have to
Create the
be there
space.
sometimes.
Create the space. Yes.
Yes. So we've covered so much. and it's time for us to wrap up. So I'll wrap up with a question of you, Ed. What are you up to these days?
Oh, wow. I'm starting a workshop series in a couple of weeks, and I'm doing some different kinds of controversial things. I've been asked, I have some friends that have asked me to facilitate some very controversial discussions about race in this country. And, because I could pride myself on not being judgmental, I think I'm going to be able to provoke an interesting discussion about race. And in particular, this discussion is going to be how white women generally feel as though that they're not the problem. It's the white men that are the problem in the country. And I want white women to start to take a second look at their role in what's going on in this country today. So we're going to be having some discussions and show some videos, and I think it's going to be fun. And I love facilitating those kinds of discussions because they open people's mind to seeing things differently.
Yes,
Yeah.
and that's the miracle. Beautiful, beautiful. Well, that should be absolutely wonderful. I've said my spiel already. I have one more slot in my class tomorrow, and I've got some surprises that I'm going to unleash next week because Spirit gave me a whole new set of ideas and a whole nother new book.
Cool.
And I'll talk to you about that next week.
All right. I look forward to it.
Yes. So we look forward to having you all on part 2 of this discussion on relationship prosperity here on the Miracle of Prosperity on the New Thought Media Network.